UIC.
Freedom the people of
Hell yeah.
Freedom the people of need. Yeah, yeah. Freedom the people of want. Freedom the people of need. Yeah, yeah. Freedom the people of want. Freedom the people of need. Yeah, yeah. Freedom the people of want. Freedom the people of need. Yeah,
Yeah. Real man a road. Now bow wolf in a tree grand a road. Now bow down to no demon a road. UIC when you see man a road, me say yeah. Real man a road. Now bow wolf in a tree grand a road. Now bow down to no demon a road. UIC when you see man a road.
Hello and welcome to another edition of, am I unmuted? Yes. Welcome to another edition of UIC Liberty TV. So a recent passing of an updated Firearms Act 2022 has triggered an opposition senator to urge the government to lobby US Black Caucuses to stem the flow of guns into the country. But why are we always begging other governments to come and fix our problems? Well, in tonight's episode of UIC Liberty TV, we expose the links between who initiated the gun culture in Jamaica and the inability of successive governments to deal with the crime problem effectively, as well as the UIC's position on border control and crime. So guys, please remember to like, share, and comment. Share the live, like the live, share the content. And of course, subscribe to our YouTube channel so you'll always be up to date with our programs. So tonight we're going to bring in Mr. Patterson. And of course, as usual, we're going to discuss the issues of the day. Good evening, Mr. Patterson.
Good evening, Mr. Harper. It's a pleasure to be here tonight and to talk about this very important topic.
Yes, very important it is. And so we're going to move straight into our first video, which is related to a recent drug bust that happened at one of our airports here in Jamaica. So I'm going to share my screen. Right, share my screen. And let's take a look at what's been happening recently at one of our airports.
At the Ian Fleming Airport in St. Mary has led to the seizure of more than $25 million worth of cocaine yesterday. The police partnered with several crime-fighting units from the US and Canada, but no arrests have been made in relation to the massive drug bust. Javine McLean reports.
On Friday, shortly after the police launched a major operational initiative dubbed Operation Relentless 2, targeting criminals, there was a major drug bust at the Ian Fleming Airport in St. Mary. The find was the result of a joint operation between CTOC Narcotics Division in partnership with U.S. Homeland Security, DEA, and Canadian law enforcement officials. Head of Crime and Security in the JCF, DCP Fitzbailey, says the cocaine was headed for Canada.
On Friday, the 23rd of September 2022, a joint operation was conducted at the Ian Fleming International Airport between the hours of 2 p.m. and 8 p.m. by police officers drawn from the Counterterrorism and Organized Crime Investigation Branch, the Narcotics Division, and law enforcement agents from the United States of America. The objective of this operation was to intercept and seize cocaine destined for Canada.
He notes the value is over $25 million. To date, no one has been arrested.
During the operation, a total of 500.2 kilos of cocaine, or 1,100.5 pounds, was seized and taken to a police facility for processing. The value of the cocaine is estimated to be over $25 million. No one was arrested. However, investigation continues in the matter.
In the meantime, the Operation Relentless initiative will target the police divisions with the highest levels of violent crimes. Among major drivers of the recent violence are ongoing conflicts among persons involved in the scamming underworld, as well as internal conflicts within criminal organizations over illegal firearms and ill-gotten gains. The operations come in anticipation of the new Firearms Act that is expected to bring tougher penalties for possession and use of illegal guns. Police
Okay, so we see where there was a recent drug bust at one of our airports, the Ian Fleming Airport, which was recently redeveloped, I think. I know that it was reopened or it was turned into an international airport sometime in 2011. But recently they were doing some upgrades to it. And well, anyway, so they have the police in partnership with the DEA and other international officials busted drugs worth over 25 million US dollars street value that was heading to Canada. And it's very interesting that, you know, these things these things are happening. Give us your take, Mr. Patterson.
Well, I have a number of takes on it, but I want to highlight a very simple aspect to this problem that many may not have looked at. Why is Jamaica spending so much money trying to stop the war, the drug trade? They call it the war on drug. It's a war that they have been losing. They spend a lot of money around the world on the war on drugs, as opposed to literally just forgetting about the war on drugs and focus on the war on crime, which is more important. I mean, Jamaica doesn't need to spend resources and time trying to track down people with ganja and cocaine and all that kind of stuff. Focus on what's coming into our country, which is the guns and ammunitions and the scamming operations affecting local Jamaicans who are being scammed. It might sound counterproductive, or not even counterproductive, but weird to hear me say that, because you think that we should be spending all of this time. Where's the demand for these drugs? It's in the US, right? So it's drugs going into their country. They decided they want to have a war on drugs, and they have gotten us to join them on that war on drugs and taking away our police officers and soldiers to go help them fight that war on drugs, as opposed to fighting the war on crime, which is to make sure that the Jamaican people are safe and that our borders are properly secure. So I want to talk about border security tonight. We know that the politicians have been benefiting from the gun for drugs trade, whether it's published or not. If you notice, in all of these major busts, you hardly have any arrests. The last one, this big one, there are no arrests.
No arrests.
So somebody in the hierarchy knew that they couldn't escape this bust. They couldn't move the product fast enough out of the way. So they moved the people out of the way, right? So nobody gets arrested. This particular one is going to be seized. For every one that's seized, there's probably 20 that was not seized. So honestly, I would like to move Jamaica away from the war on drugs and let people make their own choices there and focus on protecting people's lives from criminals. Those are going to come and break down your burglar bar, break into your store, break into your business place, kill you because of what you have and what they want to take away from you. Let us focus on those people who are getting guns to go and kill people and stop them.
Yeah, and I think that if we focus on protecting our borders, that includes anything that's illegal. So whether it's illegal drugs or illegal guns, that would stop them from coming into the country. So that will help to stem the drug war on drugs as well.
Absolutely.
But I agree.
But what I'm saying, though, Douglas, your point is perfectly valid, and I love that. Now, when you're tracking what's coming into your country, there are many things that can come in: people, physical products of different sorts, including drugs, can come into your country. Now, what is it that you want to fight? Do you want to fight a person's right to take a particular product? So, for example, take marijuana, ganja. Who is it that decided that it's a drug and that it's bad and that we need to spend billions of dollars to stop people from using it? Who made that decision? Where did they come from? Who gave them the authority and power to say that any individual should not have the authority to manufacture this product, package this product, sell this product, or use this product? Who gave them that authority? I would rather we spend our energy and effort on, you have the right to choose what you want to put into your body or what you want to buy, as long as you're not forcing anybody. Just imagine if we got rid of the war on drugs, what would happen? It would be safer to produce and sell. So you won't have all this on-the-world activities developing, because it's no longer, a secret thing that you need to know, hunker down and get guns and bad guys to protect your scheme. The tax system would benefit because it's now a taxable product that is moving through. And I know what I'm saying, is quite dramatic, because that's not what the powers that be would like to hear. Right. They would like to say, when it pleases them, they will come and tell us when it's no longer something we need to fight. So they get to tell us what we need to fight. Like they told us that marijuana was bad, and then a few years later, they're now saying it's good. And in their country, it is legal to certain degrees. And right now in Canada, I mean, you can go on any side street now and buy legally marijuana. Anybody can walk into a store now and legally buy a marijuana product. While here in Jamaica, we still have laws that are even preventing people from freely manufacturing the product and freely sell it. I'm saying, let us stop playing these games. Forget about fighting those wars that the colonial masters want us to fight. Let's fight the real war. The real war is anybody who wants to use force or fraud to take something that belongs to somebody else. That's the war I want to fight. Stop people from using violence to get what they want. Yeah.
Quickly before we move on, Devereaux asked a very important question. Says, I don't think anyone in Jamaica wants Jamaica to be awash with drugs and contraband. I lost it now.
Yeah, it's right here.
How would we protect the Jamaican people adequately from these killer substances?
All right. So Devereaux is asking, how would we protect the Jamaican people from using sugar or salt or using glue? I was in Nunavut, which is a northern territory in Canada. Nunavut. People there will sniff glue. Glue is a legal thing, very legal, right? And they'll sniff glue. Some people there drink excessive amount of alcohol, excessive amount of coffee. The way you help people is by educating them. Education is the best form of empowerment. The way you don't help people is by trying to force them, by telling them that you are going to stop them from hurting themselves. You're going to stop them from smoking. You're going to stop them from drinking. You're going to stop them from using any other drug. Alcohol is a dangerous drug, very, very dangerous drug. It's right now, it's free. You can go and buy it over the counter for the most part, right? Do you see the whole of Jamaica dropping down from alcohol? No, you don't, because there's still some smart people around. There's some people who are foolish enough to drink an excessive amount of alcohol, and then there's some people who choose not to drink excessive amount of alcohol. The same thing will happen with any drug. The moment you make it legal or take away the criminalization from it is the moment it changes people's behavior. For one, nobody has to now build a mafia or gang to protect their trade. The trade is now open. It will dilute the trade. Prices will come down. The incentive to the business will diminish. And the amount of money we're spending to have police and all kind of other narcotics division trying to track it down would go away. And where you would be putting your money now is on where it should go. Is Joseph Patterson trying to use force or fraud to take what belongs to Douglas Harper? That's where you want to put your energy. Is Douglas Harper trying to use force or fraud to take what belongs to Wes? Is Wes trying to use force or fraud to take what belongs to Devereux? And once you focus on that, now you would optimize security, you would optimize peace, you would optimize harmony in the country, as opposed to running after all these other distractions, which only creates more criminal, by the way. The more things you make illegal is the more criminals you create, believe it or not. The less things you make illegal and allow people to make their own choices and focus on education, the less crimes you will have, the more intelligent people you will have, because you're not treating them in a paternalistic way where you're telling them, oh, we are your great God that we call government, and we will figure out what is best for you. And if we don't think this is good for you, we're going to make it illegal because we, the great gods, your government, thinks you shouldn't have it. I prefer to allow you to make your own choices and, of course, live with the consequences and enjoy the rewards as well.
Yeah, and as you said, education is very important in this. We had a recent live on alcohol, and that was one of the things we were speaking of. We want to help. We want to educate our students on, on alcohol, and
Yes.
so they can make the right decisions for their lives. The same thing here. We want to educate everyone on, these substances so that they can make the choices and live with the choices that they've made.
Absolutely. And Douglas, what will happen is, let's say you decide to be a cokehead, what we call a cokehead. You decide to do that. And your neighbor looks on, and your neighbor's son looks on and you, and he says, my God, look what coke did to Mr. Douglas. Me not touch that at all. And you will say, my teacher explained to me, this is what happens when you take this substance into your body. And now he has what his teacher was telling him. And he has the example of Mr. Douglas next door. And now he passed this on to his children and the wider society. Believe me, we really do not respect humanity as much as we should. If we just respect people's intelligence and allow them to make that decision. And by the way, the reason why many people make bad decisions is because of bad education.
Yeah.
If they were properly educated, they would not make. For example, most people don't understand money, and that's why so many people are poor, believe it or not. If they understood the monetary system, politicians and the oligarchs and the cartels wouldn't be able to trick them, because they would, I see the trick. Oh, I see what you're doing. So it wouldn't happen. So you'd have less people falling for the trick. The politicians would give up. Oh, we can't trick them. Them too smart. Them know how it works. So guess what you would have? More and more people would be highly productive, very good in managing their monies, and you would not have half the problems we have in society today. But because they dumb us down and made sure we don't understand even ourselves, we don't understand our bodies, we don't understand human behavior, we don't understand money. So guess what? We make a whole heap of mistake, and a few people know how to use marketing and advertisement and all kind of other sophistications to trick us into making very bad decisions.
Yeah. Okay. So let's move on. So there's another video now. So this is where, well, it's not really a video. It's really, one of those audio. So a report was written, or a report was written, and they just put the audio to it. When you see it, you'll see what I'm talking about. But anyway, okay. This video is basically talking about, so with the recent new Firearms Act that's just been passed, one of the opposition senators were now urging the government, or is now urging the government, to appeal to the US Black Caucuses to stem the flow of guns into the country. So let's take a look at this video, and we'll come back and discuss after.
Kingston, Jamaica. Opposition Senator Damian Crawford says the government should reach out to the influential Black Caucus in the United States to lobby the American government on behalf of Jamaica with a view to cutting off the flow of illegal guns into the country. Crawford said this was an avenue worth pursuing since it is obvious that Jamaica is unable to adequately secure its borders. He made the recommendation on Friday as the Senate debated and passed the Firearms Prohibition, Restriction and Regulation Act, 2022 with 17 amendments. In the United States, the Congressional Black Caucus is a caucus made up of most African American members of the United States Congress. In defending his recommendation, Crawford asserted that Jamaica's foreign policy and foreign interaction need to be reviewed. I am calling the Black Caucus, in particular in the United States, to intervene and pressure, on behalf of countries, said Crawford. Pointing out that guns are not manufactured in Jamaica, he suggested that the lobby could be with a view to put rules in place, so we can trace who bought the guns and sent them here. Crawford pointed out that more than 80% of the murders committed in Jamaica each year are carried out with the use of a gun. He argued that the Black Lives Matter movement in the United States cannot be for Americans only. We're losing thousands of our people to weapons of destruction not bought here, not created here, not made here, he said. He suggested that the Black Caucus would be more influential in getting tangible results than any lobby mounted by Prime Minister Andrew Holness could achieve. Said Crawford, I'm suggesting that the government works through the persons who are more aligned to us based on certain realities like the Black Caucus, to say to them, let us see what strategies can be used to increase risk to those who are supplying the weapons to our society.
Her grass was threatened by her white neighbor.
Okay, so yeah, so that's the video. So we have an opposition senator basically saying that the government of Jamaica can't control borders, and we can't control the inflow of guns, and so we need to be asking international governments, or in this particular case the caucus in US Congress, to lobby for us, to force, I don't know who, but whomever, to stop them from sending the guns here. It's quite interesting.
Yeah, here's the interesting part. America is in the business of producing guns, by the way, right? So that's Jamaica is an export market. So as much as they have the big talk and whatever, the US have no problem really with guns flowing to Jamaica because they are a manufacturer of guns. So even though coming into Jamaica it's illegal, leaving their country, it's a part of their economy. People are buying it there, which means they're building the American gun industry, and they're sending it here for bad purposes. I always remember what Marcus Garvey says, and Crawford has fallen into this as well as all the others. We just seem to love to depend on other people to solve our problems for us. Yeah. We don't seem to think we have a brain and the capacity to solve our problems. But before I go there, I want to answer Debaru's question that is on screen. He says, I see your points, but how would you respond to someone who accuses the UIC of being an anarchist? Well, the UIC is about law and order. We want to protect your right to your life, liberty, and property. We believe the role of government is first and foremost to protect your individual sovereignty. It is not to dictate your choices and dictate your options and dictate what you do. It is to protect everyone else from you using that freedom to violate their rights. So that's not anarchy. Anarchy is having no government. The UIC is about having good government. Back to your point, Mr. Harper.
Yes, so here we have one of our senators asking the government to lobby, or to get the Black Caucus to lobby on our behalf. And I always find it so interesting that, we always, as you say, we always want, someone else to come and fix our problem. We always are begging for someone else to do what we should have been doing. And it just kind of shows up our, I don't know if it's that we think we can't do it or if we think we're helpless. I don't know what it is, But
Yes.
it's a serious issue. It's been happening for not just with this, but with other things. You know,
I have a suggestion.
you see the
Let us
prime.
ask
Yes, go
let
ahead.
us ask the Black Caucus to lobby the US government to launch an investigation into the politicians of Jamaica to examine forensically their wealth and to see where it is that they got their wealth from, and to go back as far as possible. And because they would have the money, the US has the money to do this, and they also have very good forensic accountants, forensic scientists. So let's do a forensic audit of all the politicians of Jamaica, especially the leading politicians. So all the living prime ministers, all the leading politicians, some have been in there forever. They're dinosaurs. They've been in there for so long. Let us ask the US and Scotland Yard, England, and the RCMP of Canada to combine their resources to investigate all politicians in Jamaica to see where they got their resources from. How about we start here? Since we love to get foreign intervention and we love foreign help, let us ask the foreign help to come in and do a thorough investigation and track the relationship of crime to politicians, to go back in time and look at where did the PNP and JLP get the guns from that they brought into Jamaica during the 80s, the 70s and 80s in particular. Go back and investigate what methods did they use to create the garrisons. How did they fund the dons that created the gangs that are now a problem for Jamaica? Let us call upon the Black Caucus in America, the US government, the Canadian government, the British government to do a thorough investigation of our politicians. How about that? I think that would solve much of the crime problem in Jamaica.
Yeah, I agree. And it's a shame that we're, scapegoating, trying to find someone to kind of, oh, can you do this for us? And it's really your fault, So we're going to
do better. Crawford knows better. Crawford knows. He knows that who is going to organize for shipments of guns to come to Jamaica and to receive that? Who is going to coordinate? Who is going to coordinate the customs officers to make sure they turn a blind eye? Who has the power and authority to make those calls and to navigate these things through? Who has the money and resources? Who has the know-how and the clout to make these avalanche of guns and ammunition come into account? Not the little boy with his pants dropping off his bottom.
Exactly.
Not the ones they go and round up in the communities and throw in the back of police car and manhandle. Who is the ones who have on jacket and tie, who are sitting in offices, who are sitting on boards, government boards? Look at the Firearms Authority, the FLA. Look at what we have found out about how they actually approve guns for known criminals.
Yeah.
So if Crawford wants to solve the problem, let him bring real credible solution to the table, like first and foremost, leaving the PNP and telling Jamaicans the truth about what he knows about the PNP and encouraging his counterparts in the JLP to leave the JLP and come forward and tell the Jamaican people what they know about those two organizations, which, if you study them carefully, they are an integral part of the organized crime ring in Jamaica. We all know that, and it's time for us to stop pussyfooting around and behaving as though we don't know that. Let us call a spade a spade. Those two groups are criminal entities, and they have been involved in criminal activities, and we need to do a thorough investigation, and we can't do it locally because we're so corrupt. Let us bring in Scotland Yard, let us bring in the RCMP, let us bring in the FBI and the DEA and any other form of A, wherever they are, to do a thorough investigation of these two criminal organizations and connect their activities to the criminal underworld, organized and disorganized, and reveal that to Jamaican people and throw them in jail. That would be a good thing. Let Mr. Crawford tell us to do that.
Yeah, and well, that's not going to happen, but we will do it under the UIC's government. So
absolutely,
we are going to play for you a video. We're talking about how politics and crime are so deeply entrenched, or deeply linked, I should say, in Jamaica. So we're going to look at a video now that speaks to that. So we're going to share that, look at that video, and then come back and talk about what we just saw. Okay. Well, I mean, most of this we already know, right? But I guess, you know, to kind of get the comments flowing, let's go and watch.
Dada's Code's rise to power is rooted in the brutal gang violence that has scarred Jamaica for half a century, and how this violence has been manipulated and encouraged by the country's political elite. When Jamaica gained independence from Britain in 1962, the country quickly came to be dominated by two political parties, the left-leaning PNP and the more pro-American Jamaican Labour Party. In particular, two leaders, Michael Manley of the PNP and Edward Seaga of Labour, divided power between them, swapping stints as Prime Minister for decades.
On the Michael Manley campaign trail, it's a day of spot meetings deep in the agricultural heart of rural Jamaica. He caps his message with the cry, "Forward with socialism," but later denies that he aims to establish a second communist Cuba in the Caribbean.
These two men emerged as the first political leaders in independent Jamaica. They had a kind of messianic aura about them. People looked to them for new paths for the independent Jamaican society.
And this political rivalry played out on the streets. Each party made alliances with gangster bosses known as Dons who ran certain neighborhoods. The semi-official deal was that the Don would deliver the votes of the people in their area, and in return, they could run organized crime syndicates with protection from the police.
The Jamaican Don really evolved first as a political enforcer. If you happen to be residing in a PNP community or a JLP community, then the enforcer's job is to enforce that political loyalty sticks, whether you like it or not.
These alliances between politicians and gangsters would erupt into open gang warfare, particularly in the run-up to elections, as each party tried to intimidate the other's supporters.
One of the most important aspects of the election has been the violence that's marked the campaign. And whilst politicians have argued, gunmen have been shooting it out in the streets.
As the murder rate spiraled out of control, rumors circulated that weapons were being supplied by the CIA and Cuban paramilitaries. Neighborhoods became known as garrisons, literal fortresses which police couldn't enter, with gang bosses wielding almost complete control. And just as the violence was getting so bad that not even Bob Marley could fix it, something happened to make it even worse: the war on drugs.
This is crack cocaine, seized a few days ago by drug enforcement agents in a park just across the street from the White House. Let there be no mistake, this stuff is poison.
In the 1980s, cocaine and crack cocaine exploded in popularity across America. Jamaica sits exactly halfway between Colombia and southern Florida and became a key trafficking hub. This fundamentally changed the balance of power between the politicians and the Dons. Instead of the gangsters waiting for handouts and building contracts from the government, they now found themselves at the center of a multi-billion-dollar trade.
By 1980, there is this influx of cocaine coming through the Caribbean corridor into the United States. And these political enforcers, they are now making a lot of cash from trafficking marijuana and trafficking cocaine.
Okay, so we see where our political parties were, I mean, there was a live where Mr. Patton said these two parties are gangs, and it really operate that way. I mean, they've set up garrisons, right? And, you know, allocated Dons to control the garrison areas in their interest, funded these Dons, you know, provided the guns for these Dons. And now, with that happening, as Mr. Patterson said earlier, we kind of lost our concentration. So we shift from focusing on guns or the crime in Jamaica to now go and fight this war on drugs that happened, that started in the 80s. So And so the crime just kind of ballooned out of that from there. It's really a shame that we have just allowed this to continue. But part of the issue is that, you know, those that are allowing it are benefiting from it. So it's kind of this where the general population is being seriously affected in the country, but there's a small minority of people that are benefiting from all of this that's happening.
Take the security companies. Look at Jamaica has a lot of security companies. Who own these security companies? What would happen if we got our crime problem under control? How many of them would survive if Jamaica became normally safe? The people who own these security companies are the same people who are influencing our political process. Yeah? And so it's to their best interest that they are there. In fact, some of them have the legal right to import firearms into this country. Can you imagine? Can you imagine somebody with the legal right to import firearms actually using that legal right to import illegal firearms into the country and to distribute the same? Who to tell? Jamaica is so corrupt. You don't know what is happening all around. You can see them come on TV, nice and pretty, with lipstick and high heels and stockings and jacket and tie, and you're talking all kind of nice things in front of the media, and you'd be shocked to know what is going on behind the scenes, because Jamaica is a very, 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 very corrupt country from the top down. That is why the UIC has a top-down policy when it comes on to fighting crime. We are not going to waste precious time and resources going after the little man in the street first. Our focus is going to be on intelligence gathering and pinpointing the kingfishers in this process. And I assure you, many of those kingfishers sit in our parliament, sit in our government boards, sit in our big business boards, and they're all there enjoying the privilege of looking nice and sweet and talking nice and sweet every day, while they are the one funding, facilitating, directing, and covering up. They're sitting in the high command of our police service. They're sitting in the high command of our army. They're sitting in the biggest of position in our government agencies and departments. They're sitting in some of the biggest companies across Jamaica. In fact, Jamaica, from its very foundations, from the days of what's his name, that pirate, buccaneer, Henry Morgan. The first governor of Jamaica was a pirate. Jamaica was built on the idea of piracy. It's built on the idea of a few misleading, misguiding, misdirecting, manipulating, and stealing from the majority. And that has been continued by our very own black men and women sitting in our halls of fame, in our government, on our dollar bills, on our currency, with streets named after them and areas of the island named after them, and they are nothing but pirates who have led Jamaica down the path where it is. So the UIC, we're going to come at this from the top down. We're going to find all of those people who are underwriting the criminal enterprise. We're going to incentivize the Jamaican people to be informers, to come and tell the truth at a Truth and Reconciliation Commission. We're going to provide amnesty to those at the bottom, to those young men and young women who were forced into a life of crime because of the community they were born into. They're born into a garrison, and they had to do as the Don said if they wanted to live. And so they had to carry the gun. They had to facilitate and participate in crimes. They had to pass the initiation test. And so they were corrupted and made into criminals because of the leaders of this country who facilitated the development of these criminal enterprises and made them become strongholds in Jamaica, to the point where the criminal enterprises became the leaders of the politicians. Yeah? And so it reversed. In one area, the gang leader was called President, and the prime minister reported to him. I wonder if you see what we are talking about.
Yeah.
The Prime Minister is reporting to the President of an area. And so when Prezi said jump, the Prime Minister don't ask him why, he asked how high. And so it took outside intervention. Yes, Damian Crawford, it took outside intervention for that situation to be dealt with, only because it was in the vested interest of the powers outside.
Yeah. Exactly.
So if Damian Crawford wants us to get outside intervention, I say bring it on, but let's bring it on the right way. Let's bring it on to fully understand what our leaders have been doing to us, how much they're connected to the problem we call crime and violence and drugs or whatever in Jamaica. Let us find out. You're going to find out that some of these leaders are the biggest drug dealers. Yeah. They are engaged in the Drug for Trade Act while they're passing laws in our parliament and saying they want to see footage of persons who were trying to open a gate to drive through the gorge, and they want to send all the police they can find to go and find those two persons. Well, I want to tell you something. When the UIC is elected, we're going to send all the police to go find those persons at the top who have been criminalizing the Jamaican people, who have been oppressing the Jamaican people, and are a part of the crime syndicate that runs this country from the top down.
Yeah. Comment here from Devereux. Sir P was right. Until politicians and big policemen and soldiers go down, then the crime problem will remain. But Mr. Patterson, how will the UIC actually go after the white-collar man?
It's called forensic accounting. It's called investigation. It's called intelligence gathering. And I must admit that we will be using outside help, only because, and not without getting the help just because we believe in foreign. It's just that we can't trust those who are in the positions right now. So we're going to have to get persons who do not have a vested interest in covering up and use their skills and technology and expertise to come in and scour the books, scour all the avenues, check all the tapes, gather all the evidence, and we're going to pay for that so we can pave the way to a peaceful Jamaica, a clean Jamaica, not just clean in terms of the street, but clean in terms of mopping up, wiping up, detergenting, if there's such a word, scouring out all avenues of corruption and criminal enterprise in this country. And that begins with the two largest gangs in this country. We are going to uncover all that they have done for they have an option, If they want, they can join me in the Truth and Reconciliation Commission and say, let's get it clean and let's say bygones be bygones and give amnesty and clean up and get the truth and move on. We can do it that way. But if they do not cooperate and do it that way, we're going to do it the hard way, where we're going to go after them, every single one of them, and bring them to justice in the name of the Jamaican people.
Yeah. So I'm going to play a video now for you guys. This is the last video, where we have our leaders basically saying what's happening, or what we see happening in Jamaica as it relates to crime. It's not their fault. Don't blame them. Pointing fingers as usual, trying to find a scapegoat or someone to blame. And so let's watch this video, and we come back and we talk a little bit more on what we've just seen.
Do not blame us. That position from at least two politicians about the state of crime in Jamaica, and in particular, the number of illegal guns and ammunition on Jamaica's streets. The lawmakers, in the meantime, are also urging foreign partners to help cut off the supply of illegal weapons into the country. We have the details from Dwayne Anderson.
The local crime situation continues to spiral out of control, with the latest police statistics indicating that 788 murders have been committed in Jamaica this year when compared to 738 in 2020. It is why local leaders are now looking overseas for more help. National Security Minister Dr. Horace Chang says international partners need to help Jamaica deal with gangsters who continue to order hits, ship guns, and influence other criminal acts in Jamaica while living in countries like the United States of America and the United Kingdom.
Our partners who keep putting pressure on us for different things need to give us more help. They're there, and they're really a kind of source, because once they're active and they have money, they keep recruiting even with our best efforts here.
The matter was raised at Thursday's meeting of the Joint Select Committee of Parliament reviewing the ZOSO legislation. Committee members Dr. Horace Chang and Philip Paulwell, who admittedly represent some of the most volatile communities in St. James and Eastern Kingston, also made it clear that they as politicians must not be blamed for the growing number of illegal bullets and guns in the criminal underworld.
I wonder if we in any way could be in supporting this by way of funding. And I have been for the last 5 years, been very careful in terms of the contracts that we do in the constituency. And of course, as you know, it's the CDF is quite minimal. So there's nothing there that they can use, nor do we provide them with any back channel support.
This narrative that you're giving out, handout to politicians, plus to gangsters, it's foolishness. We need to just focus on where they're into big business in smuggling and scamming, and along with the support from the overseas people.
The lawmakers, however, accept that they must find ways to stop the guns from reaching the unattached young men in volatile communities. Dwayne Anderson, TVJ News.
The politicians must find a way to stop guns from reaching the unattached youth in this country. How diabolical. They have no credibility whatsoever in telling us about stopping guns from reaching the unattached youth in our society. And by the way, why are they giving themselves money to distribute, calling it the Constituency Development Fund? There should be no such thing as a Constituency Development Fund. There should be government ministries with responsibility for various things that must happen in a society. There must be a government ministry that deals with justice, one that deals with public works, one that deals with policing, one that deals with infrastructure, one that deals with social services. No politician should be given any allotment of money for any expenditure at all in any constituency or division. That is not the role of a legislator. A legislator is to represent the interest of the people in Parliament, to talk about the issues, to explain problems that you're seeing, and to demand action from the executive branch of government. And because we have a corrupted colonial system that mixes the legislator with the executive, that mixes the House of Representatives with the Senate, that confuses people, not understanding the role of a minister or an MP. A minister of government should never be an MP or a senator, because he or she is operating in the executive branch, which is the branch that executes government policy. That's why it's called executive. You execute the policy. So the executive branches of government, let's say the Ministry of Transportation, their job is to make sure the country has a good, reliable, efficient, accessible transportation system. No MP should get any money to deal with transportation, for example, because that ministry would take care of that. His job or her job is to now look at that ministry and say, is it doing a good job or not? And come to Parliament and say, I am disgusted with the performance of this ministry. It's not performing properly, and we need an investigation, and I have this problem with it, that problem with it, this problem, and put some fire under the ministry to get its job done. He's not there to now be given a pot of money for him to go now to his constituency and decide how he's going to spend that pot of money. That is the root of corruption. And the person who recommended that system and the governments which have implemented that system and continues to implement it are all a part of a fraudulent, false, this is evil, it's corrupt, and it is undermining Jamaica's development. A constituency development fund is a fund for corruption, and it should be stopped immediately. Let's separate the parliamentarians from money. They must have nothing to do with touching the people's money. And let's separate politicians from the executive branch. The executive branch must be for people who are qualified and competent subject matter experts to deal with the different developmental areas of the country. Those who deal with finance, those who deal with human resources or education, those who deal with infrastructure, those who deal with justice. Let us have those separate from the politicians. Politicians are representative. They're not executors. They're not executive members. Let the executive do its job and you critique it and hold it accountable and stop conflating the two, because it's destroying our country, wasting our resources and pushing us backwards, not forward.
Yeah. A comment here by Craig McKenzie says they don't want the regular people to understand what you're saying. And it's so true. The more Jamaicans wake up to this reality, is the less they can control us, and the less what we see happening can continue. So let's get to some of the policies that the UIC wants to implement or will implement when we become government. You mentioned some of them earlier.
Yes, go ahead. Sorry, I was interrupting you. Please go ahead.
No, go ahead. So I was saying you mentioned some of them earlier, and first one of the first ones I think is to really deal with our crime and corruption is like hand in hand, and the way we deal with that is a top-down approach, as you said earlier. We really need to get to the kingpins.
Yes.
When we deal with that, the pawns will be easier to deal with. So we want to approach crime from a top-down approach. Of course, we want to repurpose our army to protect our borders effectively. This is another thing that you mentioned earlier. Would you like to expound on, although we've kind of spoken?
Sure. Well, what I'll do, I will talk about a few other pieces that I think people need to know. So you're just mentioning the top-down approach, the repurposing the army. I want to talk about some of the things we can do that we're not doing now, that we can do more effectively. Number one, we need to plan regular and random patrols of our border to keep the army very active and mobilized in intercepting incoming illegal things like illegal guns or illegal ammunition. Just imagine if we mobilize our army, stop wasting the army, get the army fully repurposed and engaged and energized in border patrol, not in police duties. You should not have the army engaged in police duties, that is policing our citizens on the inside. They should be focused on intercepting anything coming from the outside. So you want the army to be fully mobilized, fully engaged, which will keep them sharp as well. So they're going to employ all of their tactical training in covering the border on a daily basis, going around it and over it. So covering the air, the sea, the legal ports of entry, and the other unprotected, normally ports of entries, covering that on a daily basis, regularly engaged. Then number two, you want to use intelligence and analytics to track gang movements and link that with the border security, because the gangs, they are operating like a militant force. So you want to use intelligence and analytics to track the gang movements and their local and overseas connections. So you want to understand now, who is the gang speaking to? So we need to intercept their phone calls. We need to intercept their movements. We need to plant people on the inside to track their connections and movements and their plans so we can move in. Jamaica is too small for us to have gangs operating with immunity, with being able to move around the country so freely. So let's bring on the intelligence. We're too unintelligent in our approach to solving problems. Number three, we need to use drones and other surveillance technology to optimize border controls and gather intelligence more economically. You can't be driving around fully all day, but if you have drones of different sizes and types with different technical competencies to get into certain areas, even sleeper drones that goes and drop into areas and just sleep and listen You know, I'm talking about forested areas that people are not living normally, along the border and in the hills and so on, and pick up intelligence. We need to also pay local citizens to become informers by rewarding them for every successful illegal gun bust they help us to solve. So every citizen must be put on high alert that if they spot anything, here is how you can report it anonymously in a way that you get a tracking number that you only reveal when the situation has been resolved. And this allows you now to safely give information. We bust that illegal importation, and then you're rewarded handsomely for having help. So we save money because we're only paying it out when we succeed, which is to save many lives. We want to abandon the war on drugs, as I said before, and focus our limited resources on stopping the inflow of illegal guns and ammunition. Let's maximize our expertise and competencies there. Number 6, we need to develop an elite squad that monitors the ports, the customs, and the coastal waters, and never use any outsourcing for that. You want to have elite men and women of the highest caliber, highest integrity, highest intelligence that are trained to intercept and undermine and destroy criminal elements in the country. And they have to be highly paid, very specialized. We're talking about the best of the best. They're not even a part of the regular police or the regular army. These are like a ninja squad that is going to really, really double down. They'll do anything to get inside and destroy these criminal cells. Number 7, we need to make it very easy for decent, law-abiding citizens to own a legal firearm, to defend themselves and each other from criminals. We cannot continue to allow the criminals to outgun law-abiding, decent citizens. We in the UIC believe in your right to protect yourself, and no government should come between you and your right to defend yourself. And so we must make it easy and accessible for law-abiding, decent citizens who have the mental capacity to own a firearm and to be able to use it to defend themselves, to augment our police, augment our security system, and be available in the event that we need to call upon reserves to help us to defend our country. So those are my key points for tonight.
Yeah, very good points. Lion Will the Jungle says, sign me up for the Ninja Squad. Definitely. Trevor Hines, we have our work cut out to convince these people. Have some comments that I pinned here. All right, so.
Well, we only have 3 minutes to go, so let's take some questions very quickly.
Yeah. So Philip Lopez says, will our government members be willing to submit to regular financial audits to show how they get money?
Is that a question or a comment?
Yes, question. So,
well, I believe every single public sector worker, the higher up they go, the higher up the ladder the person is, the more they should be under scrutiny. So just like if you're working in a financial institution, you have to go through a certain clearance. The higher up you go in that. If you're working in government, it means you're in a very privileged position. So you must have systems in place to check your background, your finances, and to make sure that everything is copacetic. Otherwise, you go to the big house.
All right. So question here from Pure Illusion. Mr. Patterson, what is your short-term solution to lower the murder rate in Jamaica?
Well, the short-term solution is all the stuff I just talked about a while ago. If we don't control the border, the guns are going to come in en masse. If we do not attack it from the top down to catch the kingpins or the kingfish, we have a problem. If we don't develop a highly trained, highly competent intelligence unit that has all the skills and competencies we need to intercept criminal gangs and to dismantle them very, very fast, we're not going to get anywhere. So those are the things I would do as day one priorities to get Jamaica to where it needs to be.
All right, another question. Sports Fanatic says the porosity of our borders have been a major issue for years. However, the flip side is that the technology and resources to properly secure them are lacking. How do you suppose this can be fixed?
Very simple. Stop wasting money on the things we're wasting money on and shift those resources to the things we need to spend on. Let's buy the technology and buy the training that we need to have the expertise to do what we must do. And the truth is, it's not very complicated. It's only because we're such a corrupt country why we can't do it, because those in power do not want to solve the crime problem. They want to give the appearance, they want to give us the appearance that they want to solve the problem, but they're not serious about fighting crime. They're criminals themselves, I believe, and that's why.
All right, another question from Philip Lopez. With the increase in overseas investments or purchases of Jamaican resources by overseas companies and countries increasing, how would you stop this and repurchase back assets we lost?
Well, I'm not opposed to overseas investments in Jamaica or overseas companies coming here. What I'm opposed to is any laws that gives them an advantage over local Jamaicans. We must give the Jamaican people the advantage. And one of the key ways of doing that, we must take back the Bank of Jamaica and make credit available to our hardworking Jamaicans or smart Jamaicans so they can innovate and own these assets and take over these companies where appropriate.
All right, that seems like it's it.
All right.
Okay, well, guys, so
yeah, go ahead.
We've come to the end of our program, 1 hour.
Yes, and we should not allow it to go a minute over because our wives are going to kill us. So guys, thank you very much. Have a good night. One Jamaica, stronger together. See you tomorrow. Take care. All the best.